for joining me for this edition of Keep It Simple, Make It Plain. I'm Brother Nkosi, your host, and today's topic is going to be gun safety for black people. The first question that might come to one's mind is, why do you need to have gun safety, quote, just for black people? Isn't gun safety relevant for everyone? Okay, so by way of disclosure, I don't want to do anything or be accused of making a fake video. So this is gun safety, but it is not your typical gun safety class. The reason also that it says it's geared directly towards black people is because one of the things I've learned coming up in various black communities is that there's some misconceptions about the use of force in general, and also in the black community in particular. So this is what this course hopes to address. Again, this is not your classic gun safety class. I am a certified instructor. When I do my classes, I don't, I'm not allowed to, by NRA rules, to pontificate and teach anything separate and apart from the curriculum. So I can't interject my own views or anything like that, ad lib. I need to follow the set curriculum as is laid out in the manual. And to be honest with you, I don't have a problem with that, because just like I might want to say something based on my own experience, somebody else may say something, and that way there's no consistency in the training that a person would get to. So if you're teaching a NRA certified class, you need to stick to the curriculum. However, the NRA does allow for a person to have a separate class as long as it doesn't get top billing over theirs. So that's what I do. Since I already have that student, I do a second class, what I call the Principles of Concealed Carry. What I'm going to talk about here is from there. So if you're looking for a class that tells you don't point a gun at somebody unless you plan to destroy that person, don't do this, don't put your finger in the trigger until you're ready to shoot, this is not that class. There's other classes on YouTube that you can go over. There are a lot of fine classes. I've seen some myself, very good classes. Feel free to search them out. This is from the class, the secondary class that I teach, called the Principles of Concealed Carry. This is not the full Principles of Concealed Carry class, but it is a part that I think is very important. That's why I say for black people specifically, although there are parts I think that anybody can benefit from. What I have here, usually, sometimes I'm doing demonstrations, I'll use a real gun just so people can see it. This right here is a plastic gun, which I use for certain times when I want to show people what not to do with a gun. So I can never take a real gun and say, never do this with a real gun, and put it to my head or something like that. So you never want to do this with a real gun. Why would I take a real gun and tell someone not to do something while I am in fact doing it? That doesn't make sense. So I do use this gun right here. So if I want to tell somebody not to do something with a gun, I use this plastic gun here. Okay, so when talking about some of the myths or some of the things that are of concern in the black community, I remember coming up, I would hear, well, you know, if you pull a gun on someone, you have to use it. So somewhere in people's mind, there was some unwritten law that tells you that if you pull it, you have to use it regardless of the circumstances. And that's just enough to land you in jail. Because when you have a permit to carry a concealed weapon, it's a permit to carry a concealed weapon. It's not necessarily a permit to use that weapon, okay? And so that's where I don't want people walking around that conception. I've pulled my own firearm 3 times in 30 years. And fortunately, none of those 3 times did I actually have to shoot, but I felt that it was appropriate under the circumstances to actually pull it. And I did, and fortunately, in 2 of the cases, the person actually was bluffing. They didn't really have a gun. They were just faking like they did, and fortunately, I wasn't trigger happy. The third time, there were actually bullets flying, but it was actually, and I pulled my firearm instinctively, but it was more judicious for me just not to go to the window rather than to go to the window and try to return fire. So, because one of the other things I always point out in these classes is the goal is to survive the altercation, the deadly altercation that you find yourself in. The goal is not necessarily to pull your gun. The goal is not necessarily to use a gun. The goal is to survive the deadly encounter. That's your goal, okay? One of the other things I talk about in the class is proper attitude. Okay, what do I mean by proper attitude? Well, when you have a permit to carry a concealed weapon, that doesn't make you a detective, the police, FBI, CIA, Interpol, Royal Canadian Mountie, Scotland Yard, a Seamus, a gumshoe. It don't make you any of those things. It just makes you a person who is licensed to carry a concealed weapon. That's it. Your goal and your job should always be to avoid using that weapon if at all possible. Your goal should be, when situations look like they may escalate, your goal should always be to de-escalate the situation, okay? Now, sometimes that's not possible. Sometimes it may, in fact, you may even seem to appear to be escalating a situation in order to de-escalate a situation. And that kind of comes back to the black folks situation, and I'll come back to that in a moment. But overall, your goal should be to de-escalate a situation and not let it escalate whenever possible. I give you an example. One day, I was in my car, driving along, minding my own business, and I heard a loud commotion from a lane going the opposite direction, but it was pretty close to me. And this guy seemed to be cursing out his mother. And, you know, it caught my attention because I had my window open. And so I looked over, and this guy's cursing out his mother, or looks to be his mother, or whatever. And then he turns around and he said, "What the fuck are you looking at?" Now, personally, I don't like being spoken to in that manner. Now, I had a gun on me. I could have "Yeah, motherfucker, what you want to do, bitch?" I could have escalated that situation. I could have talked shit. I could have went on and returned tit for tat until the situation escalated. Now, he may have had a gun himself or whatever, or I may have escalated to the point where I then had to defend myself because, you know, this person had rubbed me the wrong way. And trust me, that did rub me the wrong way. I don't like being spoken to in that manner. However, because I was armed, I just turned away, could still see him out of my peripheral vision. I waited for the light to change, and I went on about my business. My goal, again, was to de-escalate the situation, not to have it. The next thing you know, if I shot the guy, next thing you know, "Oh, my son never did nothing to nobody, and this old mean Negro did this and that." I didn't even wasn't trying to go there. You know, my ego may have been bruised, but no harm, no foul, no court cases, no anything. I was able to go on about my business. Also, you know, you may find yourself in situations sometime where, and this happens sometime where people say, "Yeah, you know what? You might not have your gun on you." They say, "You know what, motherfucker? Be here when I come back. Be here when I come back, bitch. Go ahead, just be here when I come back." And so then you want to go into your car, get your gun, and come back to the situation, shoot, and then say, "I fired in self-defense." Not going to happen. Your ass is going to jail, okay? Your ass is going to jail. You cannot claim self-defense when you left a situation that you may have, quote, felt threatened in, but yet you want to go back with your gat because somebody chumped you or punked you or whatever, however you feel about impugned on your manhood. You don't want to do that. If you can extricate yourself from a situation, in other words, you left, and you need to keep on going, okay? that's kind of one of those things that that's specific. I won't say it can happen to anybody. I'm not going to say anybody might want to do it, but I know that I've seen black people kind of get into that whole thing. Yeah, motherfucker, be here when I come back, bitch. Be here when I come back. You know what I'm saying? In order to go get something and come back, you ain't gonna be able to claim self-defense then. Okay, because if you were fearful of your life and you left that situation and you came back to it, well, obviously you was looking for problems. Okay. Another thing that happens you have to also, or should realize, is that human life is sacred. Say it one more time, bears repeating. Human life is sacred. I often speak in my class and I tell people, you know, I'm into high-end audio. I'm a budget audiophile. So the fact that my system may have cost considerably more than the average person's system. I use the word budget because there's people that pay like $500,000 for a system. Trust me, my system didn't cost no $500,000, okay? But it's probably a lot more expensive than the average person pays for their music system. Maybe even with CDs, probably more than they pay for a brand new car, okay? No brag, just fact, right? But I tell people that should it be late at night and someone has broken into the house and they have that stereo system all packed up and my CD collection that took me, 30 years to accumulate, my awesome jazz CD collection, and they're packing it up and I'm upstairs with my gun and my bedroom is here and my daughter's bedroom is there, well, I'm not going downstairs to try to stop them. Call me a punk, call me whatever. Because you know what? That stereo system is not worth my life. And I'm gonna let you in on a little secret. It's not worth their life either, okay? It's not worth it, okay? Now, they're downstairs, they're packing it up. My wife has already gotten in position with her piece. She knows what she needs to do vis-a-vis being in my daughter's room. I'm standing by the stairs, layer one of defense. Now, should that person say, gee, I wonder what's upstairs. Okay. And they decide that they want to then come from where they're at, packing up my stereo equipment, to then come and see what's upstairs. Well, then, Houston, we have a problem. Because now they are threatening my real treasure, which is my wife and daughter. So now, the first thing they see and the last thing they see will be me. That's just it. So don't get the impression that I'm just some kumbaya pacifist in this situation. I do respect human life, but I'm not going to be trying to shoot somebody over some material possessions that can be replaced through my insurance. Okay, it's not, like I said, it's not worth my life, and it's not worth their life either. Okay? So, you know, those are things that I try to instill in people because people kind of get the wrong idea. They may get a sense of power. Some people say, well, you know, some people shouldn't have a gun. Well, they do use the example of people who have the wrong attitude. And that's going to happen. That's going to happen. Some people shouldn't drive cars. Some people shouldn't work at McDonald's. No matter what you do, there's always going to be some people who really shouldn't be doing that for different reasons. Okay? Now, the other thing that happens too is when people learn about firearms, they take a very modest approach. They're like, here's the gun, and they're like, you know, approaching it like this. It's like, wow, you know, they're almost shaking, okay? And I mean this mentally. They're not so macho and everything. They're trying to learn. They know to respect the weapon, you know. But after a while, one of the things that I've seen that happens is people get kind of cavalier. Oh yeah, man, I've been doing this. You know, I got my gun. You know, man, and I'm not saying they actually throw it around like that, but they mentally get into that frame of mind where, you know, ain't no thing but a chicken wing. You know, I got this. You know, you know what I'm saying? You should always still have that reverence. You should always think before you handle that firearm. You know what I'm saying? And don't get into a habit of just, yeah, I got to make sure it's unloaded and you just try. No, man, you need to slow your roll and handle it just like you did when you was first learning. You never hear me talk about gun accidents. There's no such thing as gun accidents. There's only gun negligence. Well, I won't say there's no such thing as a gun accident. Gun accident is if something happened where I had a shotgun one time that had it slam fired, okay? So when I racked it, the firing pin would go forward even though I didn't have my finger on the trigger. So when it discharged, that was an accident because it was a defective gun, which would have been negligence, though, on my part, had I had the gun pointed in an unsafe direction, which is part of gun safety. So you always keep that firearm pointed and gun in a safe direction. You follow what I'm saying? So this way, even though it boom went off in the house, and at the time I lived in an apartment, and in that shotgun was a rifled slug. You may or may not know what that means, but let me just put it to you this way. Had that rifle slug gone through the sheetrock, through that apartment, it would have went through 1, 2, 3, 4 different apartments had it just hit sheetrock and would not have stopped until it hit something solid or someone solid. But I kept that firearm in a safe direction, so even though it was defective and there was a, quote, accidental discharge, there was no negligence on my part, which would have been to have it in an unsafe direction. One thing that often bothers me, I've had a problem with in the past, where people say, oh yeah, I know all about guns. I was raised around guns, been around guns all my life, blah, blah, blah. That always concerns me when someone tells me that during the course of a class, because the first thing I'm thinking to myself is, what the fuck does that even mean? What, that the rules of gun safety don't apply to you? No. I don't know what that means, but that doesn't stop me. I don't care what they're trying to tell me. Oh yeah, I know that already. I still cover the full curriculum as laid out. Them how much experience they had doesn't make a difference. And I've had people that I know that have a lot of experience, but they still make arrogant mistakes, not properly checking that the gun is actually visually inspected. They'll take the gun out, take the magazine out, rack it a few times, and assume that the gun is empty. I can tell you from personal experience that one time I took the magazine out, and yes, I screwed up myself. This was when early gun handling. I'm keeping it real here. I racked it a few times to make sure, but I didn't visually inspect. And so what happened was, while I was cleaning the gun, I had a negligent discharge. I was negligent. I will say I was new. I will say that I probably could have been trained better, but at the end of the day, that makes no difference. It was my responsibility, and I have to take full responsibility. And I lucked out that no one was injured. It was a .22 low caliber gun. The other thing that did save me, however, was at least in my not doing the right thing in terms of visually inspecting, I did just keep it pointed in the proper safe direction so that when it did discharge, no one was hurt. But I was negligent by not visually inspecting. Most people don't want to admit to that type of thing. I'll admit to it. I was negligent. Okay, so always visually inspect. Well, why did it discharge? Why didn't it come out? Well, the part that was responsible for catching the back of the shell casing was worn. It no longer functioned. It had functioned tens of thousands of times. At that day, it said, you know what? I'm not functioning no more, and I never got the memo. Okay. Fortunately, it was kept in a safe direction. See, those gun safety rules are there for a reason. Never depend on the physical safety of a gun. I've had a .45 that I bought, only had it for a short period of time. It was an M1911. You may not know what that means one way or another, but let me just say this. This is kind of like an M1911, but not fully. So a real M1911 has two safeties on it. One here, this safety would be up here, and it flips up into this position, and it also has a grip safety, which means that you should not be able to pull the trigger. Even if you took off this safety, you should not be able to pull the trigger unless you had it firmly gripped here. That would be your secondary safety, because people carry the .45 cocked and locked. So they have this down with this on, so they will pull it out, use their thumb to remove this safety, put it in a firing position, and pull the trigger because it's in the grip. But guess what? It was defective. And I hadn't even had the gun for no more than, 3-4 months, and hadn't put no more than maybe 1,000 rounds through it. But it was defective. So had I just depended on that and just say, oh yeah, what if I'm playing around with my boy? I ain't got to worry about that because I took this off and I got this grip safety here. So I can point it at him, and as long as I don't put my finger at it, I don't have my grip, it'll be okay. Pow! Oh shit, I done shot someone. It's not a toy. It's not a toy. And it shouldn't get no sense of greater power. What you should have is a greater sense of responsibility. I'm not going to go much further. Last thing I will mention though, is and this is something that I think that the NRA should teach in their class, should be in there, but since they don't, I mention it. Not letting people handle guns that they can't handle. Well, what do you mean by that? Not let them handle guns that they can't handle. There was a situation where this child was given a full automatic weapon to fire at some kind of gun show or something where they was demonstrating weapons, and this fully automatic gun, I think it was a Mac 10 or something, fully auto, and she said, and she pulled the trigger, but since she got scared and was holding on to it, and the gun came up like this and killed her. That's not covered in the NRA curriculum. It should be. Not giving people guns that they can't handle. You know, someone else, I think an NRA instructor was killed when someone else was handling a firearm. I think they had it, pulled the trigger, panicked, and it's shooting, it's moving, they started spinning around, and the instructor was killed. Don't give 50 caliber handguns to your 12-year-old and say, go ahead and shoot. That's not for them. I prefer personally to train in marksmanship and in gun safety with a small 22 caliber, especially back in the days when you could actually find 22s to buy, okay? But I keep it small as possible, maybe a 380 for some persons, and then I let them work their way up to a gun, but I never give a gun to a person that they can't handle. So I talk about that in my class as well, and I want to mention that is also in the principle of concealed carry. I'm not going to go on much. There's all kinds of ways. Just keep in mind that you always want to be safe. Hopefully, I was able to keep this simple. Hopefully, I was able to make it plain. This is Brother Nkosi. Peace. As the saying goes, life is complicated. Sometimes there's situations that might appear that you might seem to be escalating a situation. What do I mean? For example, if you live in the hood, sometimes, it's not just, don't have to be in the hood, just wherever you might find a person who is being predatory. Predators have a tendency to look for whom they consider to be a weak person, or a weak link, or a easy target. So for a person like that, saying to them, listen man, I don't want any problems, please leave me alone, or something to that effect, instead of having them say, oh gee, well here's a guy that's not looking for problems, let me leave him alone, they might say to themselves, oh boy, got one. Okay, so that tone may not be appropriate, so you may need to take a more forceful tone, something to the effect of, motherfucker, I will put a cap in your ass. You will end up DRT, dead right there. You feel me? Now, with that person
and you have to be the judge of how, your assessment of the situation too. That person may back away. Having said that, anyone who hears that situation, that exchange, might get the impression that you were the instigator or the escalator of the situation. I've been in those situations where I took a more forceful approach specifically for the purposes of de escalation. My assessment of the situation was that talking nice or, trying to be a good brother, whatever, was not going to be uh, well received in this situation and wasn't appropriate, so I had to take a different tact. And believe it or not, you're actually, where it may seem like you're escalated the situation, you've actually just de escalated it. A common example, sometimes people say, well, the cop was like, I'll put a fucking cap in your ass and I'll put a bullet in your head or whatever if you move. So usually that strong voice, that threat of violence is not necessarily uh, bad. That's to make the person have some fear for their personal safety and make you feel that they are serious about that and to get you to comply with what they want you to do. And I'm not here to talk about the merits of how the police handle black people or whatnot. I do have a video on that. You're welcome to see it. But I'm saying that sometimes you don't want to say, excuse me, I really don't want you to move, so I'd really appreciate if you didn't. I mean, no, you're not going to say that. So if you're an armed person, you might want to also take a strong approach. However, because you are not, as I said in the earlier tape, the FBI, CIA, gumshoe, detective, police, whatever, those things may be taken differently coming out of your mouth than it might come out of, how it'd be taken and said by the police, or to be quite frank with you, how it might be taken if a white person said it. So, those are things to think about. You just can't be a non-thinking person when you carry a firearm. You have to be thinking all the time. So, wanted to talk about that part there. Sorry I left it out of the video. Peace.